73 minutes. That is all it took for the hottest run of Eala summer to end. No third set. No dramatic comeback. No final game that stretched forever. Belinda Bencic beat her 6-4, 6-0, and 7 straight victories disappeared in one afternoon. But here is the strange part. Maybe the most important thing Eala got from Toronto was not an 8th victory. Maybe it was finally being forced to stop. Just days earlier, everything around her was moving at full speed. Washington. 5 wins. Her first WTA title. History for the Philippines. A breakthrough into the top 20. Then Toronto arrived almost immediately. Another city. Another court. Another crowd. Another opponent. Then another opponent. Win, recover, prepare, repeat. There was always somewhere else to be. A practice court. A press conference. A recovery room. A hotel. An airport. For nearly 2 weeks, Eala was moving forward because winning gave her no reason to stop. Then Bencic stopped everything in 73 minutes. And suddenly Eala had something that had become strangely rare. A day without a match. Maybe 2. Her plan afterward sounded almost funny, compared with everything she had just experienced. Get a haircut. Get her nails done. See some friends. Let tennis leave the center of her mind for a little while. That is it. No dramatic announcement. No giant celebration tour. No promise to rush back onto a practice court. Just a young player trying to feel normal again after the biggest stretch of her career. And that creates the real question. What actually happened between Washington and Toronto? Was this simply a magical winning streak that finally met the wrong opponent? Was Eala beginning to feel the weight of everything that came before the Bencic match? Or did those 2 weeks change something much bigger than her ranking? Because if you only look at 6-4, 6-0, you see a fast defeat. If you rewind 7 matches, you see something completely different. And that story begins in Washington. Washington was supposed to be preparation. Instead, it became history. Jung Chinwin came first. Then Leylah Fernandez. Then Alina Svitolina. Then Naomi Osaka. Then Jessica Pegula. That list matters. These were not anonymous opponents, standing between Eala and a trophy. These were players who understood big stages. Players with major experience. Players who knew what pressure looked like. Players who were supposed to test whether Eala was really ready for this level. One by one, and she kept moving forward. At first, maybe people could call it momentum. Then she won again. Maybe confidence. Then another established name disappeared from the draw. By the time Naomi Osaka was standing across the net, the question had changed. This was no longer about whether Eala could create one big upset. People were starting to wonder how far the run could go. Then came Pegula. The final. The moment where an incredible week could become something permanent. Eala lost the first set 6-4. That was the perfect place for a respectable ending. A young player makes a deep run. She reaches the final. The more experienced opponent takes control. Everyone celebrates the breakthrough. Everyone moves on. That would have been a successful week. Eala refused that ending. She took the second set 6-4. Then the deciding set became a statement. 6-0 against Jessica Pegula in a WTA final. That was the moment Washington stopped being a nice story. Eala had become a WTA champion. And for the Philippines, the meaning was even bigger. She became the first Filipino player to win a WTA singles title. One sentence changed everything. Now every result carried more attention. Every next match carried more expectation. Every victory became bigger. Every defeat would suddenly need an explanation. Then another number arrived. Top 20. Before Washington, people could still talk about potential. Maybe she can reach the highest level. Maybe she can compete with the best. Maybe this season is only the beginning. After Washington, those questions became harder to ask. Potential had turned into evidence. She had beaten the names. She had survived the rounds. She had come back in the final. She had lifted the trophy. But winning creates a new kind of pressure. You spend years trying to reach a moment like this. Then the moment arrives, and professional tennis gives you almost no time to understand what happened. There is another tournament, another flight, another practice, another draw, Another opponent who now knows exactly what you just did. The trophy photo freezes the celebration. The tour does not. Eala had just gone through 5 matches in Washington. 5 wins. 1 historic title. 1 jump into the top 20. You would think that was the moment to slow down. Maybe celebrate. Maybe go home. Maybe let the week sink in. She could not. Toronto was waiting. And now the question was no longer whether Alex Eala could make history. She already had. The question was whether she could handle what came after it. If Washington convinced you that Eala belongs at this level, stay with this story. Because Toronto tested something much harder than talent. Here is the part that disappears when people only look at the trophy. Eala barely had time to celebrate it. One moment, she was holding the biggest title of her career. The next moment, she had to reset. Different city. Different conditions. Different opponent. Different pressure. In Washington, Eala was chasing something. In Toronto, people were chasing her. That difference matters. Once you win a title, opponents stop treating you like the young player having a great week. They see the champion. They see the top 20 player. They see the woman who just beat Zheng Qinwen, Leylah Fernandez, Alina Svitolina, Naomi Osaka, and Jessica Pegula. They prepare differently. They expect danger. Eala had almost no time to process that change. Then Alicia Parks pushed her immediately. Eala opened fast, 6-1. For a moment, Washington seemed to be continuing. Then Parks took the second set, 6-4. Suddenly, this was not a celebration. It was another fight. Another deciding set. Another demand on the body. Eala found the answer. 6-2. 6 straight victories. Then came Katie McNally. Eala took the first set 6-3. McNally answered 7-5. Another third set. Another long battle. And this time something else appeared. The right ankle. The trainer came out. The ankle needed attention. Suddenly the question changed. Could she keep playing? Yes. Could she keep winning? That was less certain. McNally kept pushing. The match went deeper. Every change of direction asked another question from the body. Every long rally added something to the physical bill Eala had been building since Washington. And still, she found another answer. 6-4 inches the third. 7 straight wins. 7 sounds beautiful when you say it quickly. But 7 victories contain much more than scores. They contain sprints, slides, serves, recovery sessions, flights, warm-ups, media. Nights where the body is trying to recover while the mind is already thinking about the next match. That is what made Toronto different. The victories were continuing. But the cost of continuing was becoming easier to see. So ask yourself this. How long can adrenaline cover what the body is actually feeling? Confidence is powerful. Momentum is powerful. Winning can make fatigue feel temporary. Pain can feel smaller. The next match becomes the only thing that matters. You tell yourself that recovery can come afterward. Then you win again. And afterward moves one more day into the future. That is the strange thing about a dream run. From the outside, every victory makes the player look stronger. From the inside, every victory can demand something that eventually has to be paid back. Now add the emotional weight. Washington was not just another tournament. It was the first title. It was history. It was top 20. Then Toronto brought huge crowds, Filipino flags, growing attention, and even bigger expectations. That energy can lift a player. It can also make stopping feel impossible. Your body wants recovery. Your career says keep moving. Your ranking is rising. Your country is celebrating. The crowd wants one more match. And every time you walk onto the court, you keep winning. What exactly is supposed to convince you to stop? Maybe nothing can. Maybe the only thing that can stop a run like that is another player. And waiting next was Belinda Bencic. Bencic did not need time to understand what Eala had become. She knew the confidence. She knew the winning streak. She knew the crowd would lean toward Eala. And she knew something else. If she allowed this match to become another emotional battle, Eala had already shown how dangerous she could be. So Bencic never gave her that kind of match. Then it ended. Not in another third set. Not with one more escape. 73 minutes. 6-4. 6-0. And this is where the story needs to be careful. It would be easy to look at the ankle, the schedule, the travel, and the pressure, then decide that we already know why Eala lost. We do not. Bencic deserves the credit. The first set was competitive, but Bencic kept taking time away. She kept controlling the rhythm. She never allowed the match to become chaotic. And once the second set started moving away from Eala, it moved fast. One game, then another, no dramatic swing, no opening for another comeback. No moment where the crowd could drag the match into something different. Just control. For 7 matches, Eala had trained everyone watching to expect another answer. Lose a set? She found one. Get pushed physically? She found one. Face a bigger name? She found one. Reach another deciding set? She found one. Against Bencic, there was no 8th answer. But here is the twist. That does not mean the run failed. Maybe the biggest mistake would be judging those 2 weeks by the final 73 minutes. Washington proved that Eala could win. Toronto proved that she could compete again almost immediately after the biggest emotional high of her career. Bencic proved something every player eventually has to accept. Even the hottest run meets someone who is simply better on that day. And the loss created something Eala had barely received since Washington. Space. No next round. No opponent waiting the next night. No immediate need to turn disappointment into another comeback. For the first time, the machine stopped. Recovery is not the opposite of progress. At this level, recovery is part of progress. That is what changes the meaning of 6-4. 6-0. The score says Bencic ended the streak. The bigger story says Eala finally reached the end of a sprint that had been getting faster with every round. So, how do you see it? Was this simply Bencic playing the better match? Or did the weight of the previous 7 wins also begin to show? Tell me in the comments. Because there is no need to invent an excuse for Eala to recognize that rest matters now. And that difference is important. A young player can be trapped by success just as easily as by failure. Failure tells you to fix something. Success tells you to keep going. You win, so you play again. You win again, so you keep moving. The body gets sore, but you are winning. The schedule gets crowded, but you are winning. The attention gets bigger, but you are winning. So why stop? That question can become a trap. Momentum feels too valuable to interrupt. But momentum is not something a player can spend forever. At some point, the body asks for recovery. At some point, the mind asks for quiet. And arriving healthy for the next month can matter more than squeezing out one more victory today. That does not mean fatigue caused the Bencic loss. It means the loss created an opportunity to recover after an extraordinary stretch. Those are 2 different things. And what Eala wanted to do with that opportunity tells you a lot. She did not talk like someone whose world had collapsed. She did not promise revenge. She did not describe some dramatic training response. Her plan was almost aggressively normal. A haircut, her nails, friends, 1 day away from tennis. Maybe 2. That sounds small. It is not. Because the challenge facing Eala has changed. Before Washington, the question was whether she could reach this level. Now the question is whether she can live at this level. That requires more than winning tennis. It requires learning how to recover after winning tennis. It requires handling attention, managing expectations, knowing when to push, knowing when to stop. And there is another change that may matter even more. The next opponents will not meet the same Eala that Washington opponents met. The element of surprise is shrinking. Players will study her patterns. They will study where she serves under pressure. They will study what happens when rallies get longer. They will look at what Bencic did. They will search for ways to stop Eala before the crowd and the emotion can turn a match. That is the real price of becoming dangerous. The better you become, the more seriously everyone prepares for you. And that is why the next chapter may be harder than winning the first title. Washington gave Eala proof. Toronto gave the rest of the tour information. Now both sides adjust. This is where promising players become established players or disappear back into the pack. Not because they lose one match, because after the breakthrough, everyone starts looking for the answer. Eala now has to find new answers before the tour finds too many of its own. That is why a short break matters. Not because she needs to escape tennis, because She needs enough distance to return to it clearly. 7 wins ended in Toronto, but the most important thing survived. Before Washington, Alex Eala was chasing proof that she could do this. Now she has it. She beat established players across multiple rounds. She came back in a final. She became a WTA champion. She carried that momentum into another tournament. She survived 2 more battles. Then she lost. That last part matters too. Because building a career at the top is not about protecting a perfect story. It is about what happens after the story stops being perfect. The trophy stayed in Washington. The winning streak ended in Toronto. But Eala takes something more valuable into the next chapter. Evidence that she belongs. And now the challenge becomes much more interesting. Can she make this level normal? Can she recover well enough to produce it again? Can she handle walking onto court knowing the opponent has spent hours preparing specifically for her? Can she adjust when the tour adjusts? That is the test waiting now. So maybe the best thing Alex Eala can do today is exactly what she plans to do. Put the racket down. See her friends. Breathe. Let the noise disappear for a moment. Then pick the racket back up. Because the next time she walks onto a court, she will not be treated like a surprise. She will be treated like a threat. And if you want to see how Alex Eala responds when the entire tour starts preparing for her, subscribe and stay with this story. Washington proved she can arrive. Toronto proved she can survive. What comes next will show whether she can stay.